we'll go ahead and jump into the lesson here tonight. This is my favorite time of the week, to be honest with you, is listening to the fellowship and the prayers all going on. It's a sweet spirit, and it's really great. I really enjoy that. And that's a blessing. That's a real blessing to me to see. Answer to prayer already. Looks like they moved Juliana, and she'll be flying out here like in 30 minutes or so, 30 to 45 minutes, something like that. So thank the Lord for that. Yeah, the Lord answers quick, doesn't he? So praise God. Yeah, amen. And then also I'd like to just say, some of you have asked me, so I figured I should just say thank you for praying. Yes, the surgery all heal up. I'm about like 95%. So they say next week, by next Monday, I'll be able to go back to bench pressing the 200 pounds I normally do. I can't look at my boys. My boys are like, every time they bench press, I got to go and take weights off so I can bench press, which I never bench press. All right. I'm just going to move on. We're going to go. 350. Thank you, son. Thank you. Thank you. 350 ounces is all I can do. All right. Now, go to the book of Job. The book of Job. Going to do something a little different tonight. And the theme of the book of Job is, why do the righteous suffer? That's the theme of the book of Job. And it's the oldest book ever written. There are some other books that were written around this time, but none of them ever, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, none of them ever come close to what the book of Job gives you. The book of Job deals with, a serious issue. It's a thing that, why do bad things happen to good people? That is asked all the time, you know. Why that's constantly asked. How come my grandma died? She was such a great person. You know, you hear those things all the time. So it deals with real life issues. Now, on a doctrinal standpoint, Job is a great type of a tribulation saint. You'll notice that, for example, he calls himself, references to himself as a man-child in Job 3 and verse 3. Job has 42 chapters in it, just like the 42 months of the Great Tribulation. You'll notice those things about him. So he's a great type. You'll see a lot of things in there doctrinally that are aimed at the Antichrist and about a Jew going through persecution in the tribulation. So that's why Job is a tremendous type of that. Now, something that I noticed, and what I'm going to attempt to do tonight, by the way, what I'm going to attempt to do tonight is take part of the conversation. So I'm just going to take half of the conversation up to chapter 23. And I'm going to try to just go back and forth and tell the story of the conversation. Because I've struggled before on following the dialogue, and I don't know if anybody else has. So I figured I would just try to tell the story going back and forth, and then we'll read verses. So it's a different message, the type of preaching that I've ever preached before. So we will be reading chunks as we go through, but hopefully you'll be able to follow it. Now, just to keep in mind, you're in Job chapter 2, I hope, and in verse 11 it says, "Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil that was come upon him." Now, if you weren't here last week, just go back and watch that video, and I explained about Job. I forget what I called it. I forget what I had for breakfast yesterday. So, part 1. There we go, part 1. Thank you. That'll work. Do you remember what I called it? I don't remember. All right. So anyway, now here we are continuing. So we talked about what happened to Job, and now he's sitting down, and he's going to be there among the ashes. It says, "Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil that was come upon him, there came every one from his own place, Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite," probably the shortest man to ever live. That's a joke. Okay. "And Zophar the Naamathite, for they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him and to comfort him. And when they lifted up their eyes afar off, and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept, and they rent every one his mantle and sprinkled dust upon their heads toward heaven. So they sat down with them upon the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and none spake a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was very great." Now, besides all of the stuff we're about ready to read about these 3 friends, they actually did something pretty good. And that is these 3 friends, and some of them are older, Some of them are older than Job's dad. You'll find out that in later on in Job 15 and verse 10. Some of the men that are there are older than his dad. And these three friends, that when they come to him, they see him, but they made an appointment to get together to go be with their friend. A lot of times, when people are going through something, people don't know what to do, and so they tend to be at arm's length, almost treat them like they have the plague, and don't want to be around them. Or when they do want to be around them, then they figure they have to say something, and they just start talk. Job's three friends, for all their problems, they made an appointment just to go and be with him. And they sat there for 7 days. And they were genuinely grieved when they saw their friend, and they saw him afar off. His head was shaved. He had boils all over his body. He's sitting in the ashes. He's looking thin and gaunt, as you're going to see as we go on. This affects him so much. Job is in such a bad position that his health is fading, his body's falling apart, there's open sores all over his body, his breath stinks. Literally, he just wants to die. That's the condition when they show up to their friend. These guys, the Bible calls them friends. I think they're friends. Because some of you have had friends that when the chips were down, they were nowhere around. So for all their faults, these guys were actually friends. And they show up. Now I would like to remind you that if no one shows up, there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Now I'm going to attempt now to tell this, but one last thing. There is another young man. He's not listed out here. He's listed later on. His name is Elihu. And he's sitting there, and he just sits there for a long time, and he listens to the older men in their conversation as he figures they're going to expound their wisdom, and they'll be able to explain why this happened to Job. And that's the big question. Why? Why did this happen? Now, during this conversation, two things really stuck out to me. And one of them is I noticed that the friends have the Calvinist approach to the sovereignty of God and the total depravity of man. And that may just be my reading into it, but I seem to notice that the more the conversation goes on, the higher they put God so far that he's almost out of reach. And then it didn't matter how good of a man Job was, they just kept putting him way down here. So I don't know if that's true, but I just noticed that as I was going through. There just seemed to be some type of weird Calvinistic approach, because the Calvinist puts God on such a high platform that it's almost like he's unreachable. But he's not unreachable. Yes, he's a God that's in the heavens, but he is a very present help in trouble. The second thing that I noticed in my reading is the modern rhetoric against the Jewish people that somehow they are the problem. And as we read this about Job, all this has happened to you because this is your fault, and you deserve everything you got. As a matter of fact, you deserve way more. And so what we're going to find is that the conversation goes like this, and I'm going to jump into it. The conversation goes where Job is so overwhelmed, he actually describes how he feels. And some of you are going to empathize, especially when you're going through something, and some of you are also going to say, wow, this guy is at a whole nother level of grief. When I'm reading it, I'm imagining the Holocaust victims and what they thought and how they were and all they went through, and they're sitting, why are you doing this to us? You want us to work, give us food so we can work. Like, why? Job is like there. And then on the flip side, the guy, I don't know if you call it the protagonist or antagonist, whatever you call it, his friends are looking at him and saying, look, you must have done something. And they start off nice. It starts off with a polite conversation. And then it starts verbally going back and forth like this to where it's like two guys standing in a ring just trading punches, verbally. The friends, because they're older, they get offended because Job defends himself and then has a couple of smart remarks to say back to him. Like, who do you think you are, young whippersnapper? So it gets pretty intense in this conversation. Now, like I said, we're only going to go up to Job 23. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. Just hang in there best you can. Job starts out basically by saying, I wish I had never been born. Job 3:1, after this, Job opened his mouth and cursed his day. Now notice that time got Job to curse. Some of you are not going to curse in the big things, but time will wear on you. Sometimes you may not, you'll have a health issue, and the first month it's okay, but after 10 years of it, that grinds. That grinds. Cursed his day, and Job spake and said, let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, there is a man-child conceived. Go to verse 9. Let the stars of the twilight thereof, talking about the day he was born, be dark. Let it look for light, but have none. Neither let it see the dawning of the day, because it shut not up the doors of my mother's womb, nor hid sorrow from my eyes. Why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? He's wishing he was a stillborn. Verse 16, or as an hidden untimely birth I had not been, as infants which never saw light. Verse 20, wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul, which long for death, but it cometh not, and dig for it more than for hid treasures, which rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave. Job is in such a bad state. I wish I could die, and death would be such a welcome sight. If I were to die, if I were to go out of my grave, that would be the best thing that could ever happen to me. And Job winds it up this chapter by saying, the worst thing that could ever happen to me did. Notice verse 25. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me. I'd like you for just a moment, recess into your innermost thoughts and think of the worst thing, possible thing that could ever happen to you. Don't stay there too long. Job said, that happened to me. Notice Eliphaz speaks next. Eliphaz starts off something like, I feel like I have to tell you this, but God doesn't do bad things to good people. Verse 1, then Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, if we essay to commune with thee, wilt thou be grieved? But who can withhold himself from speaking? So you notice he kind of starts out kind of nice. Verse 7, remember, I pray thee, whoever perished being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off? He continues by saying, if I were you, I would seek unto God. Notice chapter 5 and verse 7. Chapter 5, verse 7. So after telling him all these things, he says in verse 7, yet man is born into trouble as the sparks fly upward. I would seek unto God, and unto God I would commit my cause. If I were in your shoes, this is what I would do. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you right here, right now, you don't know what you would do in someone else's shoes. You don't know. Then he winds it up by saying, you'll be happy when this chastising is all done. Verse 17, behold, happy is the man whom God correcteth. Therefore despise not thou the chastening of the Almighty. For he maketh sore and bindeth up. He woundeth, and his hands made whole. Now he continues to say, I know what I'm talking about, because I've checked it out, and I'm telling you this for your own good. Verse 26, thou shalt come to thy grave in a full age, like as a shock of corn cometh in his season. Lo, this, we have searched it, so it is. Hear it, and know it for thy good. Eliphaz kicks off the conversation basically by telling Job, look, God doesn't do bad things to good people. You must have done something wrong. Then he gives him a list of things, and if I were in your shoes, I would just seek to God, and I would get things right. But don't despise the chastening of the Lord, because when it's all said and done, everything's going to be nice and rosy and peachy keen. And by the way, I'm the one telling you this. I know what I'm talking about, because I'm an old man, and I've been around the block, and I've seen everything there is to see, and I'm telling you this for your own good. Job responds, what I'm going through is so bad, I wish God would just let me die. In verse 1 of chapter 6, but Job answered and said, oh, that my grief were thoroughly weighed, and my calamities laid in the balances together. For now it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. Therefore my words are swallowed up. Verse 7, the things that my soul refused to touch are as my sorrowful meat. Oh, that I might have my request, and that God would grant me the thing that I long for, even that it would please God to destroy me, that he would let loose his hand and cut me off. And so, what you should be doing now is showing pity on me, he continues saying to his friends in verse 14. To him that is afflicted, pity should be showed from his friend, but he that forsaketh the fear of the Almighty. Then he continues and asks them, did I even ask you for advice? Show me where I went wrong. How forcible are right words? Verse 22, did I say, bring unto me, or give a reward for me of your substance, or deliver me from the enemy's hand, or redeem me from the hand of the mighty? Teach me, and I will hold my tongue, and cause me to understand wherein I have erred. How forcible are right words, and what doth your arguing reprove? Do ye imagine to reprove words and the speeches of one that is desperate, which are as wind? You're making things worse for me, fellas. It's like digging a pit for me to fall in. Verse 27, ye overwhelm the fatherless, and ye dig a pit for your friend. It should be obvious to you if I was lying about deserving this. Notice verse 28. He says, now therefore be content, look upon me, for it is evident unto you if I lie. Return, I pray you, let it not be iniquity. Yea, return again, my righteousness is in it. Is there iniquity in my tongue? Cannot my taste discern perverse things? Now Job replies back in this chapter 6 to Eliphaz, and he tells him, he's saying, look, I just wish God would just kill me. You have no idea. You have no idea how low I am. You have no idea. And here you are up there on your high horse telling me these things. I didn't even ask you for this advice. You should be showing me a little bit of pity. When somebody's suffering, you should at least pity them. But here you are, you're coming at me. You're making matters worse. Look, man, when people are going through stuff and they're really under pressure, they don't lie. It makes you more honest. I know if I'm lying, Job's telling them. It's obvious to you that I'm not lying. He says, next chapter, I don't sleep well. My skin hurts because of these open sores. I don't think I will ever see any more good in my lifetime. Chapter 7, verse 4 through 5. When I lie down, I say, when shall I arise, and the night be gone? And I am full of tossings to and fro unto the dawning of the day. My flesh is clothed with worms and clods of dust. My skin is broken and become loathsome. Can't you just imagine a Holocaust victim here? Verse 7, oh, remember that my life is wind. Mine eye shall no more see good. This man has pretty much given up on life. He continues by saying, since you are all just sitting around watching me like someone doing whale watching, because I'm going to die soon and that's it, I'm just going to speak my mind. Verse 9, as the cloud is consumed and vanisheth away, so he that goeth down to the grave shall come up no more. He shall return no more to his house, neither shall his place know him any more. Therefore I will not refrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. Am I a sea or a whale that thou settest a watch over me? Job continues, I'd rather die than live. Verse 15, so that my soul chooses strangling and death rather than life. I loathe it. I would not live always. Let me alone, for my days are vanity. Why don't you just leave me alone, fellows, so I can drown in my own spit? Why do you feel the need to straighten me out? When you come back in the morning, I'll be dead anyway. Verse 19, how long wilt thou not depart from me? Nor let me alone till I swallow down my spittle. I have sinned. What shall I do unto thee, O thou preserver of men? Why hast thou set me as a mark against thee, so that I am a burden to myself? And why dost thou not pardon my transgression and take away mine iniquity? For now shall I sleep in the dust, and thou shalt seek me in the morning, but I shall not be. after hearing this, Bildad has to jump in. And he starts off by saying something along the lines of, why are you talking like this, you big windbag? There is no way that God punished the wrong guy. You and your children obviously did something to deserve this. Verse 1, then answered Bildad the Shuhite and said, how long wilt thou speak these things? And how long shall the words of thy mouth be like a strong wind? Doth God pervert judgment, or doth the Almighty pervert justice? If thy children have sinned against him, and he have cast them away for their transgression, if thou wouldest seek unto God betimes, and make thy supplication to the Almighty, if thou wert pure and upright, surely now he would awake for thee, and make the habitation of thy righteousness prosperous. He continues, just ask some questions and you'll find the answers. Verse 8, for inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare thyself to search their fathers. For we are but of yesterday and know nothing, because our days upon the earth are a shadow. Shall not they teach thee and tell thee and utter words out of their heart? Then he calls Job a hypocrite in verse 13. So are the paths of all that forget God, and the hypocrite's hope shall perish. And he says all this because God doesn't treat the perfect man this way. Verse 20, behold, God will not cast away the perfect man, neither will he help the evildoers. Wow. Thank you, Brother Bildad. Job's up next in chapter 9. And Job says, I know all that, but how am I supposed to contend with God about this? Verse 1, then Job answered and said, I know it is so of a truth. But how should a man be just with God? If he will contend with him, he cannot answer him 1 of 1,000. He continues by saying, God is so powerful, there is no way that I could go against him, seeing there is no reason why I'm even going through this in the first place. Notice verse 12, behold, he taketh away. Who can hinder him? Who will say unto him, what doest thou? If God will not withdraw his anger, the proud helpers do stoop under him. How much less shall I answer him and choose out my words to reason with him? Verse 17, for he breaketh me with a tempest and multiplieth my wounds without cause. You see, ladies and gentlemen, he knew it was without cause. God himself told the devil this was without cause. Job continues, God's not a man like I am. I don't even have someone to go between me and him. I can't even talk with him. Verse 32, for he is not a man as I am, that I should answer him and we should come together in judgment. Neither is there a daysman betwixt us that might lay his hand upon us both. And if you're saved, oh, thank God you have a daysman, and he can lay his hand on both. Let him take his rod away from me, and let not his fear terrify me. Then would I speak and not fear him. But it is not so with me. Job continues, if I did talk to God, I would ask him why he's doing this to me, especially because I know I don't deserve it. Chapter 10, verse 2, I will say unto God, do not condemn me. Show me wherefore thou contendest with me. Is it good unto thee that thou shouldest oppress, that thou shouldest despise the work of thine hands, and shine upon the counsel of the wicked? Hast thou eyes of flesh, or seest thou as man seeth? Are thy days as the days of man? Are thy years as man's years? That thou inquirest after mine iniquity, and searchest after my sin? Thou knowest that I am not wicked, and there is none that can deliver out of thy hand. Job continues, God, you made me, but now you're destroying me. I know you know why, but you're just keeping it a secret. I am so confused. Verse 8, thine hands have made me and fashioned me together round about, yet thou dost destroy me. Remember, I beseech thee, that thou hast made me as the clay, and wilt thou bring me into dust again? Hast thou poured me out as milk and curdled me like cheese? Thou hast clothed me with skin and flesh, and hast fenced me with bones and sinews. Thou hast granted me life and favor, and thy visitation hath preserved my spirit. And these things thou hast hid in thine heart. I know that this is with thee, In verse 15, if I be wicked, woe unto me, and if I be righteous, yet will I not lift up my head. I am full of confusion. Therefore see thou mine affliction. He then asked the Lord, why did you even let me be born? Just leave me alone and let me die. Verse 18, wherefore then hast thou brought me forth out of the womb? Oh, that I had given up the ghost, and no eye had seen me. I should have been as though I had not been. I should have been carried from the womb to the grave. Are not my days few? Cease then, and let me alone, that I may take comfort a little before I go, whence I shall not return, even to the land of darkness and the shadow of death. A land of darkness, as darkness itself, and of the shadow of death, without any order, and where the light is as darkness. Well, Zophar hasn't said anything, so he feels the need to say something. So he says, do you just think that I'm going to sit here and let you speak a bunch of lies without saying something? Chapter 11, verse 1, then answered Zophar the Naamathite and said, should not the multitude of words be answered? And should a man full of talk be justified? Should thy lies make men hold their peace? And when thou mockest, shall no man make thee ashamed? He continues, you don't even know how wicked you are. If God were to speak right now, he would show you that you got less than you deserve. Verse 4, for thou hast said, my doctrine is pure, and I am clean in thine eyes. But oh, that God would speak and open his lips against thee, and that he would show thee the secret of wisdom, that they are double to that which is. Know therefore that God exacteth of thee less than thine iniquity deserveth. Canst thou by searching find out God? Canst thou find out the Almighty unto perfection? He continues, whatever you are doing wrong, stop doing it. And you'll find that everything will go back to being wonderful. Rainbows, Joel Osteen, and prosperity. Verse 14, if iniquity be in thine hand, put it far away, and let not wickedness dwell in thy tabernacles. For then shalt thou lift up thy face without spot, yea, thou shalt be steadfast and shalt not fear. Verse 17, and thine age shall be clearer than the noonday. Thou shalt shine forth, thou shalt be as the morning. Job now takes up the conversation. He says, without a doubt, you guys are the wisest people that ever lived. And when you die, so will all the wisdom in the world. Listen, I know all this stuff too. I'm not inferior to you. You're just mocking me. I know what God is able to do to people. Just ask the animals and they'll tell you. Verse 1, and Job answered and said, no doubt, but ye are the people, and wisdom shall die with you. But I have understanding as well as you. I'm not inferior to you. Yea, who knoweth not such things as these? I am as one mocked of his neighbor, who calleth upon God, and he answereth him. The just upright man is laughed to scorn. Verse 7, but now ask the beasts, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall tell thee, or speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee, and the fishes of the sea shall declare unto thee. Who knoweth not in all these that the hand of the Lord hath wrought this? 17. He leadeth counselors away spoiled, and maketh judges fools. He looseth the bonds of kings, and girdeth their loins with a girdle. 23. He increaseth the nations, and destroyeth them. He enlargeth the nations, and straighteneth them again. He taketh away the heart of the chief of the people of the earth, and causeth them to wander in a wilderness, where there is no way. They grope in the dark without light, and he maketh them stagger like a drunken man. He says, fellas, I know all this stuff that you're telling me. Verse 1 and 2 of the next chapter. Lo, mine eye hath seen all this. Mine ear hath heard and understood it. What ye know, the same do I know also. I'm not inferior unto you. He continues, I'd rather talk to God about it than you guys, because you're useless. You'd be wise just to shut up. Verse 3, surely I would speak to the Almighty. I desire to reason with God. But ye are forgers of lies. Ye are all physicians of no value. Oh, that ye would altogether hold your peace. It should be your wisdom. He continues, are you talking on God's behalf? What if God took a good look at you? You couldn't handle it. Leave me alone. Verse 7. Will ye speak wickedly for God and talk deceitfully for him? Will ye accept his persons? Will ye contend for God? It is good that he should search you out. Or as one man mocketh another, do ye so mock him? He will surely reprove you if you do secretly accept persons. Shall not his excellency make you afraid, and his dread fall upon you? Your remembrances are like unto ashes, your bodies the bodies of clay. Hold your peace, let me alone that I may speak, and let come on me what will. He continues, if God killed me, I would trust him, but I would still maintain that I haven't done anything wrong. And if I have, show me. Verse 15, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him, but I will maintain mine own ways before him. Verse 23, how many are mine iniquities and sins? Make me to know my transgression and my sins. He asked the Lord, why won't you, God, show me why you are doing this to me? Something I did when I was younger? Verse 24, wherefore hidest thou thy face and holdest me for thine enemy? Wilt thou break a leaf driven to and fro, and wilt thou pursue the dry stubble? For thou writest bitter things against me, and makest me to possess the iniquities of my youth. He continues, there is such a short time for a man to live. Are you bringing me into judgment? There is no way that clean man could come from an unclean person, talking about his mom. Just let us live out our days and die, Lord. We are not like a tree that can be cut down and grow back. I'm living all my days in pain and sorrow. God, just kill me. Verse 1, man that is born of woman is few days and full of trouble. He cometh forth like a flower and is cut down. He fleeth also as a shadow and continueth not. And dost thou open thine eyes upon such a one and bringest me into judgment with thee? Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean? Not one. Seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee, and thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. Turn from him, that he may rest, till he shall accomplish as an hireling his day. For there is hope of a tree, if it be cut down, that it will sprout again, and that the tender branch thereof will not cease. Verse 13, oh, that thou wouldest hide me in the grave, that thou wouldest keep me secret until thy wrath be past, that thou wouldest appoint me a set time and remember me. He continues, just like the waters wear away the stone, God destroys the hope of man. When he dies, he has no idea what becomes of his children, and instead he hurts on the outside and is just sad on the inside. Verse 19, the waters wear the stones, thou washest away the things that grow out of the dust of the earth, and thou destroyest the hope of man. Thou prevailest forever against him, and he passeth. Thou changest his countenance, and sendest him away. His sons come to honor, and he knoweth it not, and they are brought low. He perceiveth it not of them, but his flesh upon him shall have pain, and his soul within him shall mourn. We've gone through all three friends. Now we come back to Eliphaz. You would think in this state, here you are sitting in front of your friend, and your friend is to the point where he's like, Lord, he's telling God, kill me. Put me out of my misery. I'd rather die than be here. There is no joy in this life. All it is sadness and sorrow. You guys are against me. I can't even see what I did wrong. I can't even get a prayer through to God. It just seems like I'm here. I'm hurting on the outside. I'm sorrowful on the inside. Death is welcome. God, kill me. You would think at this point, the three friends would get the hint, but Eliphaz has been offended by what Job just said. And so, notice in verse 1 of chapter 15, then answered Eliphaz the Temanite and said, should a wise man utter vain knowledge and fill his belly with the east wind? Should he reason with unprofitable talk, or with speeches wherewith he can do no good? Yea, thou castest off fear and restrainest prayer before God, for thy mouth uttereth thine iniquity. And thou choosest the tongue of the crafty. Thine own mouth condemneth thee, and not I. Yea, thine own lips testify against thee. He's taken the moral high route. Art thou the first man that was born? Or wast thou made before the hills? Hast thou heard the secret of God? And dost thou restrain wisdom to thyself? What knowest thou that we know not? What understandest thou which is not in us? With us are both the gray-headed and very aged man, much elder than thy father. You know what the problem with Eliphaz? He's offended. His feelings are hurt. And so he has to tell Job some things. He continues, there is something in your life, Job, that you've overlooked. You're winking at it. That is making you turn against God. But God is more holy than you realize, Job. Verse 12, Why doth thine heart carry thee away? And what do thine eyes wink at? That thou turnest thy spirit against God, and lettest such words go out of thy mouth. What is man that he should be clean, and he which is born of a woman that he should be righteous? Behold, he putteth no trust in his saints, yea, the heavens are not clean in his sight. He continues, listen to me, I'll show you a thing or two. Verse 17, I will show thee, hear me, that which I have seen, I will declare. He then continues and then basically gives them a discourse on the wicked man, which is a prophecy about the Antichrist, but he basically says that Job is that wicked man. And I won't read it, but that's verse 20 down to the end of the chapter. Job takes it up in chapter 16. And he says, basically, I've heard you guys say a lot of stuff. You're miserable comforters. If roles were reversed, I wouldn't act like you guys. Verse 1, then Job answered and said, I have heard many such things. Miserable comforters are ye all. Shall vain words have an end? Or what emboldeneth you that thou answerest? I also could speak as you do. If your soul were in my soul's stead, I could heap up words against you and shake mine head at you. But I would strengthen you with my mouth, and the moving of my lips should assuage your grief. He tells them, the Lord's really putting me through it, fellas. I'm looking old and thin. Verse 7, but now he hath made me weary. Thou hast made me desolate all my company, and thou fillest me with wrinkles, which is a witness against me, and my leanness rising up in me beareth witness in my face. Fellas, the Lord has turned me over to the wicked men, and they hurt me. Verse 10, they have gaped upon me with their mouth. They have smitten me upon the cheek reproachfully. Verse 11, God hath delivered me to the ungodly and turned me over to the hands of the wicked. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, this is what's going to happen to the Jews in the tribulation, and this is what happened to the Holocaust victims. He continues, it shows on my face, and all of this is because I've done nothing wrong. Verse 16, my face is foul with weeping, and on my eyelids is the shadow of death, not for any injustice in my hands. Also, my prayer is pure. He continues by saying, I wish there was a way to plead with God and to talk with him about this. He says that in verse 21. Oh, that one might plead for a man with God as a man pleadeth for his neighbor. Do you realize the privilege we have with the Lord Jesus Christ? Amen. Job then describes how low he is. His breath is corrupt, graves that are ready for him. He's calling corruption his father. He's calling the worm his mother and his sister, and he's just ready to die. And to top it all off, the guys sitting in front of him can offer him no wisdom at all. Verse 1 of chapter 17, my breath is corrupt, my days are extinct, the graves are ready for me. Verse 10, but as for you all, do ye return and come now, for I cannot find a one wise man among you. Verse 14, I have said to corruption, thou art my father, to the worm, thou art my mother and my sister. Where is now my hope? As for my hope, who shall see it? They shall go down to the bars of the pit when our rest together is in the dust. Bildad, not willing to sit idly by and accept an insult from Job, says in verse 1 of chapter 18, then answered Bildad the Shuhite and said, how long will it be ere you make an end of words? Mark, and afterwards we will speak. Wherefore are we counted as beasts and reputed vile in your sight? He's more worried about his reputation than the way he's treating his friend. He lashes out, telling all the bad things that will happen to Job because he is wicked. Notice verse 21. Surely such are all the things he lists out in the previous verses, are the dwellings of the wicked, and this is the place of him that knoweth not God. Job picks it up in chapter 19. He makes a desperate plea for his friends to stop seeing how bad things are for him and that the hand of God has touched him. Verse 1, then Job answered and said, how long will ye vex my soul and break me in pieces with words? These 10 times have ye reproached me. Ye are not ashamed that ye make yourselves strange to me. And be it indeed that I have erred, mine error remaineth with myself. If indeed ye will magnify yourselves against me and plead against my reproach. Verse 11, he hath also kindled his wrath against me, talking about God, and he counteth me unto him as one of his enemies. Verse 14, my kinfolk have failed, that's his family, and my familiar friends have forgotten me. They that dwell in mine house and my maids count me for a stranger. I am an alien in their sight. I called my servant, and he gave me no answer. I entreated him with my mouth. My breath is strange to my wife, though I entreated her for the children's sake of mine own body. Yea, young children despise me. I arose, and they spake against me. All my inward friends abhorred me, and they whom I loved are turned against me. My bone cleaveth to my skin and to my flesh, and I am escaped with the skin of my teeth. Have pity upon me. Have pity upon me, O ye my friends. For the hand of God hath touched me. Why do ye persecute me as God, and are not satisfied with my flesh? You see the plea, the desperation in this man? Then he says this, in chapter 19, verse 23, Oh, that my words were now written. Oh, that they were printed in a book. That they were graven with an iron pen and lead in the rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God. However, sitting across from him, Zophar is still hurt from one of Job's checks after his wisdom that we read in chapter 11, and he has something to say. In verse 1 of chapter 20, then answered Zophar the Naamathite and said, Therefore do my thoughts cause me to answer, and for this I make haste. I have heard the check of my reproach, and the spirit of my understanding causeth me to answer. Knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment? Then he proceeds to tell Job just how a wicked man's life turns out. And that's what he says in the rest of the chapter. And look in verse 29. This, referring to the previous verses, is the portion of a wicked man from God and the heritage appointed unto him by God. Basically alluding that that's Job. Finally, Job turns the argument around and shows how bad things don't always happen to bad people, and good things can happen to bad people. Job 21, verse 1 through 3. But Job answered and said, Hear diligently my speech, and let this be your consolation. Suffer me that I may speak, and after that I have spoken, mock on. Verse 7. Wherefore do the wicked live, become old, yea, are mighty in power? Their seed is established in their sight. I have in my Bible an example of this is George Soros. Their seed is established in their sight with them, and their offspring before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of God upon them. Their bull gendereth and faileth not, their cow calveth and casteth not her calf. They send forth their little ones like a flock, and their children dance. They take the timbrel and harp and rejoice at the sound of the organ. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment go down to the grave. Therefore, so because of that, they say unto God, Depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. He continues, Are you going to teach God anything? Different things happen to different people. Your arguments are all wrong. Verse 22, Shall any teach God knowledge, seeing he judgeth those that are high? One dieth in his full strength, being wholly at ease and quiet. His breasts are full of milk, and his bones are moistened with marrow. And one dieth in the bitterness of his soul, and never eateth with pleasure. They shall lie down alike in the dust, and the worms shall cover them. Behold, I know your thoughts, and the devices which ye wrongfully imagine against me. Verse 34, How then comfort ye me in vain, seeing in your answers there remaineth falsehood? Eliphaz responds, and he now begins to put God out of reach, and starts to making up stuff that he thinks Job must have done. Verse 1, Then Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, Can a man be profitable unto God, as he that is wise may be profitable unto himself? Is it any pleasure to the Almighty that thou art righteous, or is it gain to him that thou makest thy ways perfect? Will he reprove thee for fear of thee? Will he enter in with thee into judgment? Is not thy wickedness great, and thine iniquities infinite? For thou hast taken a pledge from thy brother for naught, and stripped the naked of their clothing. Thou hast not given the water to the weary to drink, and thou hast withholden bread from the hungry. And then he just keeps going on and on. He then makes a plea for Job to turn back to God, and he will prosper again. Verse 23, if thou return to the Lord, to the Almighty, thou shalt be built up. Thou shalt put away iniquity far from thy tabernacles. Then shalt thou lay up gold as dust, and the gold of Ophir as the stones of the brooks. Yea, the Almighty shall be thy defense, and thou shalt have plenty of silver. For then shalt thou have delight in the Almighty, and shalt lift up thy face unto God. Thou shalt make thy prayer unto him, and he shall hear thee, and thou shalt pay thy vows. Thou shalt also decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, and the light shall shine upon thy ways. And then finally, to wrap up this section of the lesson, Job makes his famous plea that he wishes he knew where God was so that he could talk with him. And he shows that all the trouble that he is going through has softened his heart, just like you and I. Maybe you've been to a point where you're going through something and it feels like you can't get a prayer through. You feel alone. But let's read what Job says. Chapter 23, verse 1. Then Job answered and said, even today is my complaint bitter. My stroke is heavier than my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his seat. I would order my cause before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would know the words which he would answer me and understand what he would say unto me. Will he plead against me with his great power? No, but he would put strength in me. There the righteous may dispute with him. So should I be delivered forever from my judge. Behold, I go forward, but he is not there. And backward, but I cannot perceive him. On the left hand where he doth work, but I cannot behold him. He hideth himself on the right hand that I cannot see. But he knoweth the way that I take. And when he hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold. When Job wraps up this chapter, he says the condition that he is in. And he says in verse 16, for God maketh my heart soft. If you ever find yourself like Job, we're going, Lord, where are you? Lord, where are you? Everybody's looking at you like, you must have done something wrong. I would like to show the Christians something that will be of great help. Go to Hebrews chapter 13 and we're done. Hebrews 13. Verse 5. Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have. For he has said, I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee. So that we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper, and I will not fear what man shall do unto me. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a book, Job didn't have one. We have a daysman, Job didn't have one. But Job knew that the Lord would take him through it. And you have promises in black and white that you can claim. Next week when we get together, we'll pick up this conversation between Job and his friends. And they don't let up. They continue. They go at it. But we'll see how far we can get through it. I hope this lesson was helpful. Father, thank you for the opportunity to teach tonight on this. Bless now as we go our ways. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. You're dismissed.